I was motivated to write Equipping Counselors for the local church because I love the local church, and I love God's vision for the church, which is a vision for God's leaders to equip God's people to do the work of the ministry. And yet, as I looked around the landscape of biblical counseling, there hasn't been a book written about equipping counselors in over 2 decades. In addition, as I do my consulting around the country, I run into a lot of pastors who do biblical counseling, but they're not necessarily trained to equip other counselors. So the passion of the book and my passion in writing it is really to equip equippers so that the church is saturated with biblical counseling. I really wanted to describe that main purpose or message through the subtitle, which is a 4E ministry training strategy. And those 4 E's involve envisioning, enlisting, equipping, and empowering. As I look around churches that are doing equipping, sometimes they're good at the envisioning part, but then they don't know what to do once they envision. They don't know how to enlist or recruit people. Some do the envisioning and the enlisting well, but then they really don't know what to do with the people, the equipping, once they have them. And many churches, if they get through the first 3 E's, they really don't know how to empower or employ or deploy people. So the real vision is a comprehensive strategy so that church leaders can take people from the very initial launch vision all the way through to the concept of leaving a legacy of loving leaders. I really had the great privilege of pastoring 3 different churches that were very unique. One church was a mega church in an urban area. One church was a church of about 500 in a suburban area. And one church was a church that started as 100, God grew to 300 people in a rural area. And in each of those churches, I trained biblical counselors. Unfortunately, I didn't have a book like Equipping Counselors for the Local Church. Not having that, to be honest, I learned from my mistakes. But fortunately, my mistakes drove me back to the Bible. And my real motivation in writing the book then is to help people not to have to learn from their mistakes, but to learn from my mistakes, and more importantly, to learn from God's Word, how you really go about the process of equipping counselors in God's church. No, I really didn't write the book alone. I had the privilege of interviewing over 24 best practice pastors and church leaders. And through those interviews, what you really gain from equipping counselors in the local church is not only my perspective on biblical counseling equipping, you gain the perspective of 24 leaders who are on the cutting edge of equipping counselors for the local church. The audience for equipping counselors for the local church is really anyone committed to and passionate about one another ministry. One of the themes I talk about a lot in the book is that we don't want to be a church just with biblical counseling, but a church of biblical counseling. That idea means that biblical counseling and one another ministry saturates everything in a church. So pastors, deacons, elders, lay leaders, anyone committed to one another ministry is really the audience that I targeted, the person I was thinking about as I penned every word in Equipping Counselors for the Local Church.